Hey y'all, so sorry I'm not here today, but I figured I could still teach you this lesson. So welcome back to health. Hopefully you found your seats. The substitute can help you if you don't remember where you sat last time. So today is day 1 of mental health. I'll talk a little bit about the unit in just a bit. And our topic today is personality and personality disorders. But before we get to the lesson for today, we are going to take our vocabulary and volleyball signal assessment from the last round of PE. So my substitute teacher at this time, if you would please pass out the bubble sheets on my desk, and just notice they do have the student names on them. Go ahead and hit pause on the video till you pass all of those out. Please, thank you. Okay. So the substitute teacher is going to pass out the volleyball actual assessment in just a minute. Please remember, don't write on the assessment, only bubble in on your answer sheet. Keep your eyes on your own paper, please. And when you are finished, bring up your bubble sheet and the actual assessment onto my teacher desk and create 2 piles, one for the answer sheet and one for the assessment. Please remember to stay quiet while everybody else is finishing the assessment. Once everyone is done, we will go ahead and start the rest of the lesson. Go ahead and hit pause till everyone completes it. Okay, hopefully y'all just rock that test. Health review, just a couple of rules I just want to make sure we remember from the last time we were in a health. Make sure you're in your seat before the bell so I can get going right away. The papers should be on that front table, so you guys, as soon as you get them, there will be a little kickoff on every other day. So start working on it right away and keep it in your binder. All of the stuff you get from this unit will go behind the mental health unit tab in your binder. If you're absent, just remember to check the pockets in the back for makeup work. Again, just make sure we're not talking during instruction. And this is a sensitive unit too, so some students may choose to share things that might have happened to them or happened to their family or friends. So just make sure we're being really respectful when other students are also talking. Also, remember there's no food or drink in here besides water, so make sure you put it away. If you've got your phone, remember it should be put away, or you can go ahead and use that charging station up front. And remember to use the desk number that you're sitting in for the pocket that your phone goes in. In case you leave it, I know how to find you and make sure that you get your phone back. Okay, so here is our unit plan. There's 7 lessons. You are going to get a little break from me talking and have guidance talk, as well as possibly some social workers on day 6. But day 1 is all about your personality. Day 2 is about anxiety disorders as well as eating disorders. And if you're uncomfortable talking about either of those topics or any topic during this whole unit, let me know and I can definitely have you step out. We can do something different. And if you're ever uncomfortable, then just let me know as well. And I can also send you to your counselor if you wanted to talk about it with somebody else. Day 3 is mood disorders as well as depression awareness. So half the class on day 3, I'm going to do a short lesson, and then guidance will be talking to you guys in the auditorium about signs of suicide and what to do if a friend shows a sign of suicide. Day 4, this is kind of like other disorders. There are several different things. You can see them on there. We'll talk about autism, ADHD, Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, just some other really important different challenges that you might see as a friend or as a parent one day, or just friends you might know. Day 5, you will get your review guide. I'm going to do your portfolio check there. Day 6, we're going to have a human trafficking lesson, and there's a chance that the social workers from Prince William County might be able to come in and actually teach that lesson as well. If they don't, then I'm ready to rock with it. I have the whole lesson from the county. Everyone in the county does the same exact lesson. And then day 7 is our end of unit assessment. And then we'll go back to the gym after that for hockey. Okay, on page 1 of your notes, I did put your counselors. So if you're ever uncomfortable, this is where you can find who you should talk to in the counseling office. They're great people. If you haven't met yours yet, you should stop by and meet them at some point. Okay, so day 1 is Introduction to Mental Health, Personality, and Self-Concept. I like the little comic, "Why are you so obnoxious?" It's your heredity. It just means that that's how you're born. And that's a lot about your personality, is traits that you are born with. So you might actually be similar, shockingly, to your mom and dad. Okay, so what is mental health? And remember, you all need to fill in page 1 as I go through the notes. So I think they're the ones that are on blanks. So what is mental health? It's how you function during different activities. So how do you learn? How do you express your emotions, whether they're positive, whether they're negative? And really, how do you form relationships with other people? That's a really important skill that some kids do easily. Some kids, it might be a little bit more of a challenge. But relationships is a pretty important part of life. And the fourth one, really important, is how do you cope? So how do you cope when things are changed, when there's uncertainty? How do you cope even when there is a failure? And it's a learned skill to learn how to cope with different things. And some people really struggle in that aspect. Substitute also, if I'm going too fast and you need to hit pause so they can copy, please do that. Don't feel like you have to rush up with me. Okay, mental illness. It's a recognized medically diagnosable illness, and it's a disorder, not a decision. Nobody chooses to have a mental illness. It's something that you just have, and it is medically diagnosable. So that's really important. A lot of people will view mental illness as something that someone can help or they can change themselves. You would never tell a cancer patient, "Hey, don't have cancer." So nobody would ever tell a person with a mental illness, "Hey, don't have anxiety," or "Hey, don't have an eating disorder." It's not something someone can switch on and off. It is recognized, and it can significantly impair part of their life. It can make it challenging, but it is important to understand it is a diagnosable illness. That's not a choice. There's tons of different causes of mental illness. First of all, it could be the family history of the illness. So especially if you have something in your family like a disease or genetics, just like most things like heart disease, that's a genetic illness that someone can inherit. Same with mental illness. It's also something you can inherit from a parent. It also could be from a lifestyle or health behavior, and that could be, a lot of it could be drugs. And that can trigger different things, especially like think about someone that uses something that's like a hallucinogenic drug. You can actually see something that when you're on the drug that triggers in your regular life, all of a sudden now you see the same trigger. So drugs are a big one. Smoking, lack of exercise, those are also different ways. Levels of stress, that's super important. Stress can really trigger a lot of things. Exposure to drugs, trauma. So you think about PTSD. I'm sure you all know about PTSD. A lot of people will have PTSD after a traumatic event, such as like going to war and fighting for our country, or if they were in a really bad car accident. That's very traumatic. That's a traumatic life experience. Or even a rape or a violence that have happened or something they witnessed. Personal life circumstances and history. That can also be another one where maybe they just have different things going on at home. Maybe they've got something that's causing them to have whatever is going on, a circumstance, and maybe even a history where they've had something prior and something triggers it coming back. Access to supports. This means, do they have health care? Because if they don't have health care, then they may not be able to go get the help that they need. Or even like a social support, like maybe they don't have somebody they can talk to about what's going on inside their brain. Coping skills, and that really, some people, they are actually very delayed and they don't know how to cope, whether it's a challenge, whether it's something serious that happened to them. Coping skills play a big part of your mental health. 1 in 4 people will suffer from a mental health problem. So if you're sitting at a table of 5, the odds of one person possibly having a mental health problem in their lifetime is really great. If you're at a table of 1 in 4, really, it's one person sitting at your table in their lifetime probably will have some form of mental health illness. Now, don't start looking around and being all creepy, you guys, but it's just a statistic that's important to understand. So it's so common in our country. Mental health facts. Okay, so I already said the 1 in 4 one. 1 in 10 young people experience a period of major depression. That means they were seriously depressed, like clinically depressed, for a long period of time. 1 in 25 Americans lived with a serious mental illness such as schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, or major depression. That is a big number. And those, when you hear things like schizophrenia, bipolar, major depression, those are serious health illnesses that people would need and they can get treatment for. Okay, so there's a lot of myths regarding mental illness. Here's a couple of them. Psychiatric disorders are not true medical disorders like heart disease and diabetes. That is false. They are diagnosable medical illnesses. So that's a big myth. People with a severe mental illness such as schizophrenia are usually dangerous and violent. Absolutely not. I have several friends that I grew up with that I found out as an adult had schizophrenia growing up. It's very common, actually, and you will never know that they have something like that. They're not dangerous, they're not violent. At times, perhaps a small percentage have been dangerous and violent, but in general, they're not, and it's so much more common than you would believe. If you have a mental illness, you can will it away. Absolutely not. You cannot say, go away, eating disorder. It doesn't work like that. You have to be treated. It also doesn't make a person weak because they have a mental illness. Does having cancer make a person weak? No, you would never say that to a person. So until you understand that mental illness is not a choice, then you're still partaking in that mental illness stigma or way people view it. So here's a quote from Demi Lovato. Our society tends to shame or ignore those with mental illness, and I want to change that. She's actually been really prominent in our culture now, talking about her suffering from bipolar disorder, her suffering from bulimia and eating disorder we'll talk about on another lesson. But it's really important to understand mental illness, and it's not a shameful thing. It's so common. So many of our Americans and so many of our classmates and people that go to Patriot have them, and it's something we need to understand. So stop the stigma of mental illness. So stigma, that just means like how people view it, and it's usually in a negative way, the stigma. So here is a video on ending the stigma. I hope it works.
Hello, my name is Henry Boyd Jenkins. I have a diagnosis of schizophrenia.
I had depression. I had a miserable, horrible life for many years.
I also happen to have been diagnosed bipolar 1 disorder.
I'm also someone who suffers from chronic schizophrenia.
I suffer from borderline personality disorder,
major depression and anxiety.
I live with bipolar disorder.
My dad suffered from depression and anxiety.
My sister has bipolar disorder, and my nephew has schizophrenia.
Mental illness strikes with a two-edged sword. On one side are the symptoms and distress and disability.
My dad committed suicide because of those feelings of anxiety and depression.
So I went from practicing law on that Friday to being in bed for a number of months.
On the other side, though, is community's reaction to illness, the prejudice and discrimination that makes up stigma.
Stigma happens because they're members of a group that are feared, despised, loathed.
Stigma sucks.
Stigma has impacted my own confidence.
I just thought I was abandoned, ignored by people. I've come to learn that it's a very common occurrence with people with mental illness.
The stigma, the version of what it is to be mentally ill, has cost me 2 of my siblings out of 3.
It's woven into the fabric of our society, and it stems back centuries, really, when mental illness was considered a character flaw.
There's such a bad stigma attached with having a mental illness or showing a symptom of it, and it's just not okay. Not in the high schools, not at all, actually.
Every life is touched by mental illness.
It doesn't matter if you're black, you're white, you're a man, you're a woman, you're young, you're old. It affects all of us.
In very personal ways.
People who have a mental illness are excluded and treated unfairly. And this is because people are afraid of mental illness.
In the long run, stigma produces a kind of isolation that grows from fear.
As a kid, my dad would vanish into the ether. No one said anything. I learned later, no one was allowed to say anything.
Silence helps perpetuate the stigma surrounding mental health and suicide.
The conversation simply needs to start.
When we just open up the conversation and begin speaking about it, it's amazing what can happen.
It's okay to talk about it.
Talk to others.
Talk about these things.
Talk out loud without fear.
Because as long as stigma exists, it prevents the society as a whole from incorporating these illnesses into a dialogue.
With advocacy, we can help educate, inspire, and inform people.
I co-founded Bring Change to Mind because I figured if my family was this way, there were millions of other families just like us.
Organizations like Bring Change to Mind are vitally important in our anti-stigma landscape.
And the less stigma, the more people will seek care and get the treatment that they need.
As millennials, we know the power our group can bring to cause social change.
And by connecting with millennials in social media
To end the stigma of mental illness,
we can make a real difference.
What they do and what efforts they take on really will move that needle of stigma and move toward the goal of ending stigma toward mental illness in contemporary society.
we have to be the generation to really normalize and get people talking about it, because if they don't, nothing's going to change, and we need it to change.
Thanks to Bring Change to Mind, I no longer feel like I'm an outcast.
And I think that BC2M is doing an awesome job of connecting people. And connecting people is what it's all about.
Having a mental illness is not a sentence to a bleak and painful life. You can have a good life. There is hope.
I'm here today because I got the right help, and you can do it too.
Life is good. It's even wonderful.
A lot of credit goes to Bring Change to Mind.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks a bunch.
Thank you.
Okay, so here are different types of mental health help. So you have school guidance counselors, and their job is to really help you with your academic and social, personal counseling. Great people to go see. You also have social workers. Those help individuals, families, groups, and communities also just basically help live together and have a good well-being. And they'll help them with developing personal skills. You have psychiatrists. They're supposed to diagnose mental health illness and prescribe medication, but really in general they don't really do much of the counseling. A psychologist is supposed to focus extensively on the psychotherapy and how to treat the emotional and mental suffering in patients. They can also prescribe medication, so that's an important thing for people to know. But in general, all types of them, they have the same goal. They're to help people feel better, and people have to understand that even if they're having a mental illness or they're struggling with something, that there is definitely help somebody can do. Now, during this unit, do not self-diagnose. And it's something, I say that over and over again, and I'll see 9th grade kids say, oh, I think I have that. Oh, I think I have that. No, don't self-diagnose. And that would be a doctor. If you're concerned or if you see that you have a lot of symptoms of something, talk to a doctor, but it doesn't mean you have it. Okay, so just please don't self-diagnose. And that turns like Wikipedia and that WebMD, people look up all the symptoms on the internet and they think they've got everything like the comic says, but that's not true. Okay, so coping skills and strategies. This is basically how do you adapt to difficult situations? And you learn your coping strategies when you're really small, and you start to do them with people that you're in contact with when you grow up. So a lot of times you cope similar to a parent or similar to another sibling. And you develop habits. Sometimes they're positive coping habits. Sometimes they're extremely negative coping habits. And that's really important because it's gonna say, how do you handle a catastrophe? How does your confidence handle a failure? And you really need to learn how to cope in a positive way and try to rid yourself of a negative coping mechanism you might be doing, whether it's quitting, whether it's shaming yourself or tearing down your confidence. You don't want to do that, because it really is important to cope well, because you're going to fail all the time, and failure is great because you learn from it, and it means you're trying something hard. So stop thinking of when you fail something that it's a disaster and it's the end of the world, because it's not. I fail every day. I probably failed 10 times today already, and it's okay. And that just means you're trying something hard and you're putting your best effort forward. And if you're not putting your best effort forward, that's a coping. Learn how to put your best effort forward. So here are some coping skills, especially when you're in high stress situations. So we talked about that last unit. Diversions. This could be just doing something, taking a break from whatever's stressing you out. Write, draw, paint, do photography, read. Just take a break. Social and interpersonal skill. This means, like, if you're struggling with something mentally, talk to someone you trust or encourage others to. Right? Cognitive. This just means in your mind. So brainstorming. And if you're struggling in school, brainstorm why you think you are. You're not organized. You're not doing your homework. And then try to figure out solutions. Once you know the problem, try to figure out a solution, like using your agenda, different things like that. Create a list of your strengths to help your confidence. Really important. Release your tension. Exercise is so important. And it gets that endorphins going in that system. Y'all remember them things. Those things are like the magical hormone your body makes that makes you feel good. So exercise, build something, use a punching bag if you're angry to try to get that energy out in a good tension releaser way. Physical, get enough sleep. Hopefully y'all remember how many hours should you be sleeping? 8.5 to 9. Hopefully y'all got that right. Eat a good diet, fruits, veggies, avoid those fats. Get into a good routine, so what you do in your daily life, and then actually eat a little bit of chocolate. That does make you feel good, and it's actually got caffeine in it that'll bump you up just a little bit, maybe give you a little bit of a burst of energy. Okay, so personality definition. So I believe I am all the way down on the back now. Okay, so on the back of that page 1, it's basically it's a mix of how you feel, think, and behave that make you different from everybody else. So no personality is identical. You may be similar in certain ways, but it's how you think, feel, and behave. That's why we have different people, and different personalities make the world a wonderful place. So the areas that affect your personality, so this is number 9 on your sheet, y'all. Heredity and your environment. So heredity, these are the traits you're born with. So you might be similar to mom or dad. But your environment, these are different traits you develop due to your surroundings. So people you're around, your friends, your home life, things that really affect you as a person. Okay, so there's 2 common personality types. Okay, we'll find out which one y'all are in just a second. You have an introvert and an extrovert. Okay, so easiest way to figure out which one you are, if you have free time, what do? Would you be alone or would you be with people? So introverts, really, they love to be alone. Okay, they like to work alone than they would in a group, but they really enjoy being alone. An extrovert finds a lot of enjoyment being in groups, so they like to be around a ton of people, and they work better with others than they would alone. Now, do you guys think you can tell an introvert from an extrovert just by looking at them? The answer is no, you can't. What do you guys think I am? Little pause. Ha ha ha. That's funny. Anyways, I am an extreme introvert, which is kind of weird because I'm a teacher and I'm with kids all the time. But I love to be alone whenever I get a chance. Usually it comes at my house. I have to hide from my kids for a few minutes just to get a little piece of quiet just by myself. But yeah, I am an introvert, and I love being alone. I always have since I was a small child. Okay. So here is a self-test. All you're going to do on your answer on your page is just mark A's and B's on your paper that go along with this. on how to care for introverts. Introverts are awesome people, just like extroverts, but you do need to respect their privacy for sure. They do probably want to have a little bit more space. Never embarrass them in public. That's torture for an introvert. It should be something like if they get in trouble or if you've got an issue with them, it should be one-on-one in a quiet situation, never confronted in a large group. It's going to make them feel extremely uncomfortable. Let them observe first in new situations. They like to probably stand back and see how it's going, and then they might join in. Give them time to think. Don't demand instant answers. Absolutely, they want to process what they're seeing. Do not interrupt them. When they're starting to speak, it's a big deal, so make sure that you're quiet and stay patient. Extroverts usually are the ones that interrupt anyway. Give them advance notice of expected changes in their lives. That's a big one. Give them 15-minute warnings to finish whatever they're doing. Reprimand them privately. Again, so speak to them one-on-one versus in a large group setting if there's something that's not cool. Teach them new skills privately. They probably don't want to be in front of everybody doing something. Enable them to find one good friend, and they don't need to have 100 million friends. You just need one good friend. And then don't push them to make lots of new friends. That's just not in their personality. And respect their introversion and don't try to make them an extrovert. Introverted people are just as awesome as extroverted people. Now, an extroverted person, respect their independence. They like to do things on their own, and they like to do their own way. So compliment also in front of others. That makes them feel good. It usually thrives and builds their confidence. Accept and encourage their enthusiasm. Usually they're excited people. Let them explore. They do like surprises, as opposed to introverts who usually aren't. They don't like surprises. They like to know what's happening. Understand when they are busy, like just let them go, let them continue to play. Let them dive right in. They probably want to take apart a box, not read the directions, and try to figure out how to put things together. Give them options because they like to plan their own route. Make verbal and physical gestures of affection. So they probably high-five people all the time down the hallway. They might hug or, just slap them on the back. Good little things, like they like those gestures of affection. And then let them shine because extroverts, just like introverts, are awesome people. Okay, here's a clip. It's actually really funny about introverts and extroverts.
Now, in case anyone does not know the difference between an introvert and an extrovert, quite simply, an extrovert is recharged by spending time with people, whereas an introvert is recharged by spending time alone. If you're still confused, as an example, if you consider 4 people in a room a party, you're probably an introvert. Extroverts are the exact opposite. If you have 15 people in a room and you still need 30 more to consider it a party, then you're probably an extrovert. Now, going to parties is absolutely terrifying for introverts. Terrifying. Like, it's easy to identify the introverts at a party because they're often hanging out near the snack table, making frequent trips to the restroom, staring at pictures on the wall for a little bit too long, or even finding meaningless tasks that can absorb their time, like cleaning up after everyone else. Now, I'm an introvert, and I have no idea how to carry on a conversation with someone else. I just can't do it. Like, someone will come up to me, "Hey, Doug, how are you?" "I'm good, how are you?" "Well, I'm fine." "Good. How's your... I really like, Okay, bye. Now, for the introverts out there, how terrifying is it when the pastor says from stage, "Okay, now go meet someone that you don't know." Oh no. Like, you have to pretend like you're so engulfed in reading your weekly bulletin that you didn't even hear it. Don't get me wrong, I like people. When I see people from a distance, I will generally think, that looks like a very nice person. I hope that their life goes very well for them. Really. I want everyone to feel welcomed. I want everyone to feel loved and appreciated. I just don't want to be the person that has to do it. Does that make me a bad person? I just have a hard time talking to people that I don't know. Like someone that I knew was trying to get me connected with someone else, and they asked, "Can I have so-and-so call you?" Yeah, I mean, of course you can have them call me. Not gonna pick up, but you can have them call. Like if you've ever dialed a phone number and said to yourself, "I'm on voicemail. I'm on voicemail," you might be an introvert. That's very hard to explain introversion to someone that is an extrovert because it doesn't make any logical sense. Like I literally get exhausted if someone is talking too much or giving me too many details. How is that even possible? Like someone is speaking. All I have to do is sit completely still and allow the vibration of the air from their voice to enter the holes inside of my head. That's it. That's all I have to do, and yet somehow this can be a physically exhausting process for me. Like some people talk so much I feel like I have to take a nap after our conversation. Like some people just go on and on, don't they? Now whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, I'm sure you know someone that will not stop talking, and hopefully no one in the audience is thinking about me right now. Now you do all the subtle hints to let the person know that they're talking a little bit too much. Like you'll look at your watch, yawn, start looking around, maybe pacing back and forth, even start slowly backing toward the door. Nothing works. Now for these kinds of people, I have a solution to this problem. I've decided to start carrying a squirt gun. When it's time to go, squirt. That's it. Someone comes up and says, "Can you believe the price of milk went up 14 cents? I called every grocery store and told squirt. My cat did the cutest thing yesterday. Squirt. You should squirt." It doesn't actually hurt anyone, but it does give you a moment of silence to get away if you need to. I call it my squirt gun of justice. Honestly, I don't think my life will ever be the same.
Okay, so self-concept. That's an individual's beliefs about themselves. So it's basically who you think you are and what you believe. And it's going to change over time, and it's based on a lot of different pieces. It makes up what your self-image is of yourself, how your self-esteem is, and what you really think your ideal self should be. Okay? Self-image, that is what you see in yourself. So, and like the picture right here, I can't do it. I must not make a mistake. I'm not worthy. I must be perfect. Nobody loves me. I'm not good enough. That's a big deal. So this is how that person is feeling about themselves. The picture on the bottom one, this is somebody with like an eating disorder where, and a lot of times they do have body dysmorphia when they have an eating disorder, and they see themselves as extremely large and heavy. However, they're extremely thin and frail. So their self-image is not real. So it doesn't always mean what it really is. So here's the one of the kitty cat, and they really believe themselves to be a lion. So it's affected by your parents, your friends, media, who you consider to be the perfect person. And again, it's not always real. Okay, so just keep that in mind.
I'm a forensic artist. Worked for the San Jose Police Department from 1995 to 2011.
I showed up to a place I'd never been, and there was a guy with a drafting board.
We couldn't see them, they couldn't see us.
Tell me about your hair.
I didn't know what he was doing, but then I could tell after several questions that he was drawing me.
Tell me about your chin.
It kind of protrudes a little bit, especially when I smile.
Your jaw?
My mom told me I had a big jaw.
What would be your most prominent feature?
Kind of have a fat, rounder face.
The older I've gotten, the more freckles I've gotten.
I would say I have a pretty big forehead.
Once I get a sketch, I say thank you very much, and then they leave. I don't see them.
All I had been told before the sketch was to get friendly with this other woman, Chloe.
Today I'm going to ask you some questions about a person you met earlier, and I'm going to ask you some general questions about their face.
She was thin, so you could see her cheekbones. And her chin, it was a nice, thin chin.
She had nice eyes. They lit up when she spoke.
Cute nose.
She had blue eyes, very nice blue eyes.
So here we are. This is the sketch that you helped me create, and that's a sketch that somebody described of you.
So yeah, that's...
She looks closed off and fatter, sadder too. The second one looks more open, friendly, and happy.
I should be more grateful of my natural beauty. It impacts the choices and the friends that we make, the jobs we apply for, how we treat our children. It impacts everything. It couldn't be more critical to your happiness.
Do you think you're more beautiful than you say?
Yeah.
We spend a lot of time as women analyzing and trying to fix the things that aren't quite right. And we should spend more time appreciating the things that we do like.
Okay, so I think just that's a great campaign Dove has started, and there are several other commercials out there. It's just a great thing that they're doing to try to let people see their self-image in a different light. Okay, so, oops, yeah. 3 contributors to your self-image is basically your physical description. How would you describe yourself? And a lot of, unfortunately, women tend to describe themselves in negative undertones. Your social role. So this is what role do you think you play? Are you a student, housewife, member of a football team? But they help us to kind of understand what we're about. And your personal traits, like how you would describe your personality. I'm impulsive, I'm generous, I tend to worry a lot, those types of things. Okay. Self-esteem and self-worth. So self-esteem, that is how much you like yourself, basically, and how much you value who you are. And there's a big evaluation that a person would do, and usually it does swing either more in a positive light or in a negative light. 2 factors that influence your self-esteem is the reaction of other people. If they admire you, flatter you, if they want to hang out with you, that helps your self-esteem. If they avoid you or tell you negative things, definitely starts to push you towards a negative self-image. And the second one is how you compare yourself with others. So like whatever group you think is the type of person you would like to be. If they're more happier, better looking, then it helps to push you more towards a negative self-esteem. Examples of high self-esteem and examples of low self-esteem. High, you tend to think positively about yourself. You're confident, you have self-acceptance, and you really don't care about what others think. And you're usually optimistic, so you have a positive light. You look on life in a positive way. If you have more of a low self-esteem, that means that you think negatively about yourself. Usually you do have a lack of confidence. You are constantly thinking you want to be or look like something else or someone else. You're very self-conscious about what other people are going to think of you. And a lot of times you do tend to be more pessimistic. So you think in a negative tone about things. Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about personality disorders. This is where it gets super interesting with mental health. A personality disorder is when there is a long-term pattern of behavior and emotion that are different from what we culturally expect, basically. So, for example, we see somebody get hurt or injured or go through something very significant that's in a negative way. Most normal people and healthy, mentally healthy people would feel sad, or they would feel some form of sadness for the person that's going through something. It would not be culturally normal for a person to see something negative or a car accident and be happy. So that would be where now we're treading the line of a personality disorder. Now, the symptoms from all personality disorders can be from very mild to very severe, and it's very, very different. Okay, so first one is paranoid personality disorder. This is basically, it's extreme paranoia, and they have a long-standing suspiciousness and a mistrust of others. They're on the guard, constantly believing that people are trying to hurt them or threaten them, and it affects their daily life. Some people can be like paranoid about stuff, but it doesn't change how they live their life. If you have paranoid personality disorder, now you can't live a normal, healthy life. You can't do anything but think about somebody trying to hurt you. Okay, so this is one of my favorite movies. It's called Conspiracy Theory, and the Mel Gibson, who's the actor, and is very old, sorry, by the way, he plays a person that writes a conspiracy theory for the United States, and he has paranoid personality disorder, and you see it very much in this video, in this little short clip of him just showing his daily routine, but it's a great movie. Okay, so that's just a really good movie. So his theory that he actually writes ends up being true in the movie. So the United States really tries to find him and help him and figure out how he figured it out. Antisocial personality disorder. Now, this is basically, it's characterized by a long-term pattern of manipulating, exploiting, or violating the rights of others. So a lot of times they're criminals. And it's like in movies and in things you might have seen, like shows, they might be referred to as like a psychopath or a sociopath. In like pop culture, that's how they would, in movies, that's how they would term them. But those, neither of those are recognized by like a psychologist, psychiatrist. Those are not real terms. That's just like what movies have made up, psychopath, sociopath. The correct term would be antisocial personality disorder. So now you're looking at like serial rapists, people that steal things constantly, even like serial killers. They would have antisocial personality disorder. Okay, some symptoms of it. And unfortunately, you do see young people that have it, maybe not as extreme as serial killers, but you do see young people that are high school age that are already showing and exhibiting signs of antisocial personality disorder. And you might see some of the symptoms at an early age. So first one, failure to conform to social norms. So you just aren't respectful of law. You're doing things constantly that you could be arrested for, and you just really don't care. Deceitfulness, so you are a pretty constant liar, and that is a big sign early on as a young age. All kids lie doesn't mean they have antisocial personality disorder, FYI. It's just when you lie about things that really, it doesn't, there's no personal, there shouldn't be no lie. Impulsivity, so they just don't plan ahead. Irritability and aggressiveness, so they are constantly in physical fights or they assault people. The big one here, though, reckless disregard for safety of others. They don't care about other people. They don't care if they get hurt. They don't care that they're in pain. They might even find enjoyment in watching that. Constant irresponsibility, basically they're constantly failing to do what they're supposed to do or honor their obligations. And the biggest one is a lack of remorse. So they do not feel anywhere bad about hurting, mistreating a person, or stealing another person. So think about like a rapist or a killer or someone that just assaults people for no reason or whatever, and they just don't feel bad about it. Most people, like if you like hurt somebody, even if it was on accident, you shut someone's finger in a door, you feel immediate regret and, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, are you okay? And there's nothing enjoyment that you find about it. So that could be a sign as well. Schizophrenia, and a lot of kids get freaked out by this one, but it's way more common than you believe. It's where a person loses contact with what's real and what's not. So they have delusions, they hallucinate, they have thought disorders where they hear things that aren't happening, and they're not sure what's real and what's not. Some symptoms of schizophrenia, again, the delusions, the hallucinations, the disorganized speech. So that one, you can imagine anytime you're trying to say something or talk, imagine somebody whispering in your ear. Your speech would be kind of like all over the place. You probably would stop speaking so you could hear what's being whispered in your ear. So it does come across very disorganized. But the things that they're hearing, probably they're not real. So it causes them to have a hard time keeping on a train of thought in their speech. They can appear grossly disorganized, so they're not sure what's going on or what's going around them. Or they can even go into a catatonic behavior where they're kind of in the zone and staring off into space there. Okay, so this video is going to show Anderson Cooper going through a simulation of having schizophrenia. And he's going to wear headphones that talk to him. And a lot of times, a person with schizophrenia, the voices sometimes can be a little bit more angry or scary. And sometimes they can go through times where they're kind and gentle. But you'll see him, and this is very typical for a person with schizophrenia.
So I'm going to put these earphones in, and they're going to try to do a series of tests. Okay, so I'm now hearing sort of whispers and voices in my head, and the first test is some number puzzles.
Listen, you suck, and they know it. Can't you get this right?
Okay, so did this test for 3 minutes, and I did not get a single one. It's very hard to concentrate when, if it's like music or something constant, it's easy, but people talking to you is very difficult. So now I'm going to be asked a series of questions by our producer, Susan, and these are basically a series of questions that a person would be asked if they were being admitted to a hospital.
Can you tell me what day it is?
Yeah, it's Sunday, June, I don't know, what's the date, 7th?
So I'm going to say 5 numbers, and I want you to repeat them back to me after I'm done.
Okay.
5, 23, 67, 2, 76.
5, 23, 67, something 76.
I'm going to say 5 words. You don't have to repeat them, but just listen to them. Cat, book, cigar, damage, and rain.
Make you okay.
Can you name the last 4 presidents of the United States?
Okay for you to
Barack Obama, George Bush,
here. Right here.
Bill Clinton, and George Bush.
Here.
So those 5 words I said before, can you remember any of them?
Here.
No. It's hard because sometimes the voices are like whispering, and sometimes they're aggressive, and sometimes they're kind of comforting. And again, with people kind of talking to you all the time,
It's okay.
It's hard.
Don't worry.
So I'm going to try to make a boat or origami following these instructions.
Hey, it'll be okay. Near. Get near.
Shut up!
I want to talk back to the voices now, but it's really distracting. It's,
Not do it. Do not touch that stuff. You suck! What are you looking at? This is easy. You want to touch that?
I can't do this.
Hand down. Keep your eyes down. Just do it, Stuart. Just do it. Filthy mind. Leave it alone.
It's also frustrating because they're telling me I can't do it, and so I didn't do a very good job with the boat. But it's really hard to focus when kind of people are whispering to you and talking to you.
Just come clear. Come here to me. Come here for help.
Hey, do you have yesterday's paper? Yesterday's New York Times? No? Okay, I'll just get today's. It's incredibly distracting on the street to have somebody talking in your head, and it makes you feel completely isolated from everyone else around you, and you don't want to engage in conversation with other people. You kind of find yourself wanting to engage in conversation with the voice in your head because they're constantly being really negative and talking to you, and everything they're saying relates to things that you're actually doing. They're criticizing things you're doing. It's like it's like you have a chorus watching you and commenting on what you're doing, and you can't help it. And I literally find myself wanting to kind of respond to them, kind of tell them to be quiet, and it's incredibly unpleasant. This is a very, very unpleasant experiment. It's really, it's eye-opening because it kind of really shows you what other people must be going through who deal with this on a regular basis. But also, like, I cannot wait to take these headphones off because it's really depressing. It's very negative. It makes you feel very, very negative. Yeah, it's very creepy. I want it to stop.
Eyes down. Back up. Stand up now. I'll count you off. I'll count 20, 30, 40. Stand up now. Walk away.
You're okay.
Walk now.
Pacify. On to pacify. All the way to make it home.
Okay, so you could just see how creepy it was right then and there. Moving along, the next one is It's referred to as DID, or dissociative identity disorder. You guys may have heard of it as multiple personality disorder, but the correct term is dissociative identity disorder. And this is basically where the person has basically a disturbance of who they are, their identity, and it possibly creates two or more separate and distinct personality states or identities. And the personalities control that person's behavior at different times. So really, they become different people in a sense. However, it's the same body that's talking, the same body that's moving around. It's just their brain has separated different personalities. The alters are the different personalities. So each alter, the personality that's taking over, has its own memories, has its own sense of ownership of the person. They can have a different age, race, gender, and they have their own personal story of who they are, and they can be very, very different from one another. Okay, so this is a show that's actually on Showtime, and it was called The United States of Tara. And there's a woman in the show that has dissociative personality disorder, and she's the one that's kind of the creative brains behind the show. So she actually helps to lead the show based on her own experiences. She also tells her story, so it's an interesting perspective.
She's an author, a blogger, an artist, a wife and mother, and a consultant on the Showtime original series, United States of Tara.
We'll be exploring the deep roots of my mental illness. Is that much fun even legal?
How does Leah Peterson know so much about multiple personalities and DID, dissociative identity disorder? Because she lives it.
One of the things that I get asked a lot is, because you have multiple personalities, how do you even deal with life at all? Are you just a crazy person? And I tell them, no, I'm just like everyone else. The only difference is that my support system inside is set up different than yours. Everyone dissociates to a certain degree. Everybody comes home from work and doesn't want to think, and they get in front of the television and they veg out with their beer, and they're doing a certain amount of dissociation right there.
It's a big black hole, Max, and every shrink who's ever looked inside my skull has said there is a reason. I don't know. Maybe I don't want to know what that reason is.
When I was about 4 years old, I had some medical procedures done to me without anesthetic. And that was when I first split. With subsequent abuse, then other personalities came as well. So by the time I was a teenager, I had 7 distinct personalities. When I was 4, the first one, Claire, came out. She was like kind of a savior at the moment, because when you're 4, you can't really process what's going on. And so the first time she came and introduced herself and said, "Hi, I'm Claire." And I said, "Hi." And then she said, "Let's go fly." So she took me out of the situation so I didn't feel any pain. When I was young and doing the medical procedures, Leah too was also growing up at the same time, but she got stuck at 6 years old. So when I was being integrated, it was her turn to really go through all of those emotions of the abuse and grow up. Sydney came out around 9, 10, 11. Her role is kind of the fun and the life of life, kind of having a positive attitude about things. I have gatekeeper and protector, and gatekeeper's role is to make sure that, or was to make sure that no information came forward before I could handle it. And protector's job was similar, except for he had the power to make sure that if things were overloaded, he could shut the whole system down. Predator is the last alter that I had. He was number 7, and he was basically there to hold all of the rage and anger that had to do with the abuse. He was a very scary personality that I wasn't communicative with, and then he actually became a friend and changed his name to Steve. And then it was great.
I need the body. Well, it's mine. Oh, come on, just for a few hours.
With my alters, I'm mostly co-conscious my whole life. Right at this moment, for example, I'm the one that's talking and the most forward. Claire's also here, and this is her mannerism of being strong and confident. Because if she wasn't here, I would be a little different.
Can a person be fixed, like a car?
Working up to being integrated, I went into behavioral therapy. Once you have coping skills for all of your personalities and you're on a good medication that helps you not become depressed, and you go through sessions to really deal with all of the secrets, then you're in a place where you could become integrated. But if the personalities have secrets, then there's really no way to integrate as long as people are holding things back.
Alice, what are you not telling me?
Nothing, my prince.
Once you have a multiple personality disorder, I think you have it for the rest of your life. There are things like having a corporation where everyone works really well together.
Becoming a whole person can be lonely, but it's the only way out.
There is integration where you combine all of your personalities, but when more traumatic things come up in your life, a lot of times some old personalities or new personalities will come out.
It does seem like the person we've been dealing with since you started these new meds isn't really you.
You think I'm an alter?
It's hard for me to tell you what it's like to live with multiple personalities because I don't know what it's like to be someone else. Your different personalities will sometimes fight with each other, especially initially before you get into a lot of therapy. And so you end up doing and saying a lot of things that you regret. But I can tell you the things that I love about it are, in any situation, I'm going to make it through.
It could get worse before it gets better.
The thing that I love about Tara is that it's bringing more awareness to the general public beyond the mental health community. I realize that some of it's sensationalized, but it makes people want to watch, and they're talking about it. The sooner more people talk about it, the less stigma there will be attached to it, and then people that have mental illnesses will be treated more like people that have physical illnesses. The more work that we do towards that, the better it is for everybody.
Okay, so that's that show, and she really does a good job of explaining what it really means to have a dissociative identity disorder. Okay, so narcissistic personality disorder. This is where people, really they're narcissistic, but they have an inflated sense of their own importance. They think they're the most important thing in the whole wide world. They have a need for deep admiration, so they just want people to think they're the most beautiful, the most awesome at everything that they do, and it's pretty obsessive about that. And they also have a lack of empathy for others. They don't really care about what others think, feel, or things that they're going through. They just don't care at all. There's no compassion there for others. All right, guys, so borderline personality disorder. This is characterized by they have difficulty in regulating their emotion. And they have severe unstable mood swings. They become very impulsive. They're unstable. Usually they do have a poor self-image. So they think pretty unkindly of themselves. And their relationships with others can be rather stormy. That means like they argue often, or they even might become violent. And they really have a hard time with any relationship or getting close to people because their mood swings, they're so unstable, it just makes it a challenge. They also have a pretty severe reaction and fear of abandonment. So they usually avoid relationships, and they constantly think of people abandoning them at times that they need them. Okay, folks, so that is the end of the personality lesson. Next class is going to be on our anxiety and eating disorders. So we will talk about different types of generalized anxiety, phobias. We'll also talk about obsessive compulsive disorder, as well as PTSD. And then we'll spend a little bit of the time, probably half the class, on eating disorders, where we'll talk about anorexia nervosa, bulimia nervosa, binge eating disorder. Again, I know all these topics are really sensitive to a lot of people. If you are ever uncomfortable, please understand that just talk to me in private. If there's a video playing, you can ask to just step out for a bit. If you ever want to see your counselor at any point in time during the unit, please just let me know and I can let you go. I know it's a touchy subject for a lot of students. So just do your best and let me know what I can do to support y'all. It's actually an interesting unit and to understand where people are coming from. So make sure the page 1 goes into your binder behind that mental health section. Remember, we will be having that binder check on day 5 this unit, so that I can check it and make sure everything is completely filled in. If you miss something, ask a neighbor to see if they got it correct before you pack up. The bell's going to ring, I don't know, hopefully shortly. Hopefully I timed it well. But make sure you stay in your seats till the bell rings. When the bell does ring, make sure you push your chair in. Make sure there's zero trash near the ground. Just make sure we take care of our situation in that classroom. I hope y'all have a great day, and I know it's a short week, so I will see you guys next week, which is really weird. So I'll see y'all on Monday. So have a good day.